Hey everybody, how's it going? Like Butter here, and today I wanted to talk about the past 1.5 and survival PTS that we had, give my opinions on it, maybe some suggestions that could improve it in the future, and overall just tell you, what I thought. So, this is just some gameplay. I did this solo on challenging Russian Consulate, so it'll be a nice long video, long gameplay for me to talk over rather. And let's talk about 1.5 in survival. So if you don't know, 1.5 is a free update that's adding new gear score, and new things to do in the game. It's also bringing a new gear set called Defense, which is super cool. It's like the frontline gear set that never really made it into the game, but it's also adding like 256 gear score. It's adding a lot of new weapons like the FAMAS, the MG5, the M700, the Rhino, and also new named gear items, which I think is super cool. It's basically like exotic items where you can get like Barrett's chest piece, you can get Pharaoh's mask, and they all have unique talents that we've never seen before in the division. And I think that even if you're on PS4, because if you don't know, PS4 gets survival a month later, which is the DLC part of it, you're still going to have tons of things to do, and I'm very, very excited. So before we talk about like what I thought about survival in 1.5, let me kind of talk about the whole controversy about people thinking it's too soon for a raise in gear score. Now, first of all, the Division is a looter shooter. The whole point of the game is to get loot so that you can kill enemies easier to get more loot. That's just how the game works. That's how the game creates its longevity. It's the main objective in the game, is to get better gear. And gear score constantly has to be increasing over time, or else what's going to happen is people are going to get everything that they want, and then what's there to do? Obviously, you can PvP, you can do other stuff, but essentially, in order to feel like you're progressing through a game like the Division, there needs to be higher gear scores added as time goes on. Now, with that being said, I do agree that it seems like it's a bit short term from 1.4, and that's because it is, but this isn't going to be a regular thing. The reason it is so short term is because 1.4 basically reassembled all the gear that was already in the game. You got to realize the gear that we had in 1.4, even though you may have just started playing the game again, that gear has essentially been there for close to 4 to 5 months. Like the 268 gear has been all the way since 1.3. 1.3, I think, I want to say it was the end of July. So you had August, September, October, November. Yeah, like four-ish, 4.5 months of content. That back when the 268 gear set items like just came out, those items became the 229 items. Like the 229 items weren't some new thing. They were just rebranded to align with the high-end items. So I think it's very necessary for people like myself and people who stuck with the game throughout that it's time for a new gear score. And I know it may be frustrating if you just got back into the game in 1.4 and you think it's a little bit too soon because you were min-maxing your gear. That's just part of the game, and I think it would be very selfish to hold the players that have been there from the start back just because you just started playing the game. And I don't want to sound rude, but that's just true. The 256 gear score has to happen, and the reason it has to happen is not only because we haven't had a gear score increase in such a long time, but also because gear score increase helps leave mistakes behind. Things such as like, 204 weapons that have crit chance, enemy armor damage being in a minor slot, things like that. Like, in order to leave mistakes behind, the gear score has to increase. That's the best way to leave old things that need to be out of the game back without completely taking it away from people, because when you take things away from people, they don't react very well to that. So the best way is just to increase the gear score, and I'm happy that they're doing it. And this way, all of us can come together and gear up together, and that's what's going to happen. And then when Last Stand comes out, there will be another gear score increase, and that's the point. And now it's so much easier to loot and so much easier to get the gear that you want because of how plentiful the loot is. This shouldn't be an issue whatsoever. So I want to talk about that just for a second. With that being said, let's get into 1.5, because 1.5 is the free update that everyone's going to be getting. Now, this patch doesn't have a date yet. I would like to think that on State of the Game tomorrow, technically later tonight if you're in the US, we will be hearing when that release date is. Now, there's speculation saying that it's going to be November 22nd, and I honestly think that's probably not far off. It was leaked on one of the Xbox websites that it was releasing on November 22nd, and it feels like that's about right, because usually anywhere between like 7 to 10 days is when we get a patch after the PTS is done. And the PTS actually got cut a little bit short, so I want to give my opinions on that. I think that they're rushing out 1.5, and I say rushing out very lightly, but I feel like they're kind of pushing it out too soon so that, you know, PS4 users can get it before the end of the year. I don't know if there's some sort of policy there where they have to get it in by a certain point, or if they just want to have it out to PS4 users before Christmas. But it seems like they're pushing it out a little bit early. You know, only having a week and a half PTS makes me very nervous, because there was a decent amount of bugs in survival and also in 1.5, like things that need to be rebalanced, like the MG5, which was completely overpowered. Hopefully they nerf that. But I hate the idea of them making changes and then us not testing it on the PTS, because the Division's the type of game where when one thing gets fixed, 3 other things get broken, and I just don't want to see the game be released too soon before it's finished. You know, I had a comment on one of my last videos, and I couldn't disagree more with what this person has said. Basically, they said, Drew, I will be so angry if 1.5 gets pushed back, because right now I have all the gear that I want, and I want new content and this and that. And my opinion on that is that I'd rather have the overall health of the game be put first and make sure that a patch doesn't get pushed out before it's finished than worrying about being selfish and wanting more gear sooner. I think it's time to set that aside, because that's what got this game in a rut in the first place. Pushing things out before they were finished, being rushed, and just having things not work the way they were intended. Overall, I think the 1.5 patch was like okay, but there were some things that I want to talk about. First of all, the MG5 did way too much damage. The base damage needs to be nerfed quite a bit. The hipfire accuracy on the MG5 was insanely accurate, even more accurate than the SMGs, when I think it should be the complete opposite. I think LMGs shoot so accurately when you're aiming. There's no way that you should be able to run around with an LMG and hip fire accurately with that LMG. I think if you're holding a light machine gun as heavy as they are and as much recoil as they have, it should be shooting all over the place if you're hip firing. Now, SMGs, on the other hand, if it's an MP7, an MP5, or a Vector, those weapons I think should be able to be hip fired accurately, because they're such small weapons that it would make sense that they had less recoil. Essentially, they have higher fire rate, but if you look at it like the MG5 has 800 RPM, which is up there with like the MP5, and that's even higher than the Vector and the AUG. So I definitely think that we need to see some changes to the MG5. Damage needs to be nerfed. Hipfire accuracy needs to be way worse than it was. And I think that I was testing the MP7, and the hipfire accuracy on the SMGs were atrocious. Like it was just shooting all over the place. And I hope that gets reverted, if not in 1.5, then in 1.6, because I think that the SMGs right now are like the weakest weapons in the game, and the reason for that is because they lose to assault rifles, LMGs, and sniper rifles at long range, and they lose to shotguns at close range. Now, the only counter to shotguns up close when you're using an SMG is to be mobile and to make them miss their shots, which is hence one of the biggest problems on console, because it's hard to make them miss, because you're usually L triggering or LTing, whatever you want to call it. You're aiming more on console essentially, because the hip firing is a lot more difficult. And if you're aiming more, it means you're a slower target, easier to hit with a shotgun. Also, the auto aim is going to cause a lot of problems there, and that's why shotguns are so strong up close. But on PC, you actually have a counter to shotguns, because with the hipfire accuracy being so accurate, you're going to be constantly strafing that player and making them miss their shots. So I really want to see the hipfire accuracy be added back to the SMGs, because I think the SMGs should have accurate hipfire, since that's like the only advantages they really have in the game currently. So that was my big thing with that. Now, the new weapons seemed really good. The M700 was a really fun bolt-action sniper rifle to use. There was a bug with Provident that was super annoying. I hope they get that figured out, where Provident would proc at every single shot. That shouldn't be the case because that's going to completely break the game. There was also some other small issues with just the handling feeling pretty clunky on some of the new weapons, but overall I think they'll get that under control. The NPCs, I want to talk about this because I really feel like the NPCs, the 34s, even though they shouldn't feel stronger, felt a lot stronger in the Dark Zone. I can't really figure out why they felt so much stronger, but I played a little bit of 1.4 today and the NPCs felt close to as strong, so maybe it was just all in my head or maybe the build that I was running. But it's pretty obvious that even though enemy armor damage was added into PvP, using it as a main stat is not going to help. You know, people aren't going to get rid of armor because you just need to get that 60% armor in order to survive in the Dark Zone with how hard the NPCs are hitting. So even though I would like to see a little bit of a nerf to the NPCs in the Dark Zone, I'm still willing to give it a shot and see how it is. Now, the reason I feel like the NPCs shouldn't be super strong in the Dark Zone is because this is the only PvP area that we have in the game. Now, you can call survival PvP, but most of your time playing survival, you're either going to be fighting NPCs or surviving the environment. You'll have small fights here and there, but it's not the majority of the time like it is in the Dark Zone, where if you want to go in PvP, you can constantly PvP. But with the Dark Zone being the only PvP area in the entire game for people who want to play like that, it just doesn't make sense to have the NPCs be as strong as they are. Now, the counter argument to that is that, well, it's not a PvP area, it's a PvPvE area, but you got to realize 95% of this game is PvE. You got like main story missions, you have underground, you have HVTs, you have like all these options for a PvE player, but there's only one option for a PvP player, and that's to go in the Dark Zone and PvP. So I feel like the real risk that should kind of be in the Dark Zone is other players. When the NPCs are so strong that you have to sit there and take cover and take a long time taking them out, you're going to be vulnerable to getting ganked by other players. And I think not being able to run by those NPCs because they do too much damage, it's gonna cause more and more ganking in the Dark Zone. And I honestly think that when the NPCs are weaker, you see that less often because people aren't as focused on the PvE as you would be in like a main story mission. In a main story mission, you can spend your time focusing on the NPCs because you don't have to worry about getting ganked. So hopefully if the NPCs get a little bit too out of control and a little bit too strong, that they lower the damage of the NPCs by like maybe like 10% or 5 or 10%, something like that. I don't know. It felt like the level 34s just melted in the Dark Zone, and I just couldn't figure out what the problem was. But I didn't notice any problems with like the shotgun stagger. Now, you know, we only had like a week and a half, so I didn't have a chance to even test the auto aim on the shotguns, so we're not even sure how that's going to be. So we'll have to wait and see. So overall, I think 1.5 will be pretty good. Love the idea of the named gear. I hope they build off this and continuously add more exotic items, because I think that's super awesome that they did that. I'm actually going to be going for Pharaoh's Mask. I'm going to be going for Barrett's chest piece, and I'm going to eventually build a all high-end build. So it's going to be super fun to go for, and I can't wait. So let's talk about Survival. So I think that Survival will be hands down the best DLC that's came out so far. Underground, I really like Underground, but I don't think it was executed as well as it could have been. I think they could have had many more scenarios and many more things to do in the Underground, other than just, you know, you do this phase, you shoot a bunch of enemies, you go and you get this thing for the JTF officer, and then you protect. Like, after doing it, like, you know, 10, 15 times, you start to realize that a lot of the missions are very close variations of each other. And I think that survival is kind of the opposite. Like, I saw some people saying that, like, oh, the survival is the same thing every time. That's not true at all, actually. Survival is different every single time, because every single time that you do a survival run, you're going to have different scenarios. You're going to spawn in a different spot, you're going to find different loot, you're going to come across different players, and you're going to get different gear. And it's going to feel different almost every single time. And I'm so happy that there's a game mode that I can kind of just chill and play solo and enjoy myself while talking to my stream. And it's something super relaxing. And like, if you're a new player to the Division, I think survival is going to be awesome, because if you go in and you don't know what you're doing and you die, so what? You start over. Whereas like in the Dark Zone, you lose XP, you lose you know, all that stuff. You lose the gear that you had, blah, 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 blah. So I think survival is going to be really awesome. There were a few bugs, though, that it didn't get fixed during the PTS, so I'm very nervous that it's going to release this way. And one of those things was the frame drops, the bad performance issues when having a gunfight with more than like 3 to 4 people. Now, if you're in a 1v1, it doesn't seem to lag. If you're in a 1v2, it doesn't seem to lag. 2v2, not even that bad. But once you get like 3-on-3s or 1v3s or 1v4s, if you watch my survival videos, you'll see that there's very, very heavy frame drops. So you may not notice it as much, you know, on video, because, you know, the video is like locked to 60 FPS. But when I drop from 120 frames all the way down to like 30 frames, and it's skipping really bad, it kind of kills the experience of the PvP. And if there's performance issues on PC, I'm very scared for the console players, because many times before there's been issues on console and not on PC. And I really hope that it's a PC specific problem and console players don't have this issue, because, you know, performance issues has been a huge problem in this game on console, and I don't want to see those issues further affect the experience of these players. Another thing that was kind of annoying is you would see certain bugs, like visual bugs, where people would get downed and you would kill them and they would keep crawling, or they'd stand back up. I know those things are kind of just annoying and they don't really affect the gameplay too much, but that could definitely be annoying for a new player. There was also bugs in the leaderboards where, you know, it would say you were first even when you weren't first. The agents remaining thing was way off. Like, sometimes it would be like at 5 agents, it would jump all the way to 20, and it would take forever for it to update. So I really hope they get those things under control. And overall, I think survival is everything I wanted it to be. To take the Division elements and put it in like a battle royale style game mode is so cool, and I'm so excited for the future of this game. So overall, I think 1.5 in survival is going to be really good. I do think there needs to be some changes made, and like I said, I can't help but feel a little bit nervous that these changes are being made without it being looked at on the PTS, because I don't want to see them, like, you know, fix a couple things and all of a sudden new bugs pop up out of nowhere. This game has just started getting good reputation and good press from websites and stuff, doing articles talking about how the game has become bug free and there's barely any bugs anymore. You know, that's one of the main things I think that pushed people away from the Division. Like, people say, oh, I ran out of stuff to do, but in reality, I seriously think that a huge reason people moved on from the Division is all the bugs, all the exploits, and all the annoying things that ended up popping up out of nowhere that people would take advantage of. And I don't want to see the game go back to those stages. That's why I'm a little bit worried about them releasing it a little too soon, but hopefully they get everything under control, and I believe in Massive, and I think they'll do a good job. Overall, I think you guys are going to love the new updates. I can't wait to get my hands on it. I'm thinking it's going to be November 22nd, but like I said, tomorrow on State of the Game, that should be confirmed or denied. Thank you so much for watching this video. I'm going to let the rest of it play out if you want to watch it. I appreciate you being here, and hopefully you have a fantastic day. Take care, everybody.
Intercepting transmission.
Coyote 1, this is Hornet. Copy?
Hornet, this is Coyote 1. We copy.
My mainframe alarm was tripped. I'm on my way in.
No need, sir. The Russian's locked up in some kind of safe room, but he can't hold out much longer. We have JTF on site, but it's nothing we can't handle.
It's not JTF. I'm on my way. Hornet out.
Warning. Hostiles inbound on your position.
You are not U.S. Army.
Can you make him hear me? Vitali. Vitali, it's Dr. Jessica Candle from New York. We spoke at Innsbruck after your talk. I know you, and you know my work.
Dr. Campbell, do you have my notes? Are they safe?
Vitali, it's okay. We're here to help you. Can you open the door?
Okay. Okay, Ah!
Vitali, what's going on? There was a breaching charge. Move, Agent.
Exit. Alert. Intercepting transmission.
This is Hornet, boss. I got Chernenko and I pulled his notes off the server before the JTF accessed them. We're ready to extract.
Good. How about our friends?
They're close. Permission to engage?
Granted. Let's see what the second wave is made of.
files off that agent's shade tech. This will take days to analyze, but there's something here. Something scary. It's a good thing I've got this. Not that good. We had Chernenko taken out from under our noses. I've got his notes. I don't need them. At least not yet. Oh, there's so much good data in here.